Board games! What are they, and can we make them more interesting? Oh no, I spelt it wrong! Board games are the equally cool cousin to TTRPGs, but despite them both being tabletop favourites, they can be very different. Some try to blend the line between the two with mostly great results. However, here are 3 campaign ideas for your TTRPG based around the mechanics of different board games. Also, do leave a comment down below if you've done something similar to this before, or you've added some weird or fun mechanic into your campaign to enhance it in an unexpected way. Now, chances are you started playing tabletop games with D&D, and you started doing all this because you were locked inside your house during COVID. But now that we're finally free to roam the streets and we're mostly free from all this disease, let's put it back into our games. Pandemic, the board game, is a game where you try to find a cure to stop a disease from wiping out humanity. Sounds pretty bleak. Perfect. For your next campaign, present your players with a hex map of your continent and start the players somewhere in the middle. Then, have the campaign hook be that there is a magical disease, zombie infection, rolling magic fog, or the continent is slowly cracking due to opening magical ley lines. As everyone you meet is terrified of this approaching threat, it's time for you to be the heroes that this world needs by finding and killing whoever the source of this affliction is. Because of this, the campaign has a ticking clock mechanic as the affliction encroaches on more and more of the map. However, here's where I step in and meddle with the design. The clock isn't measured in days that pass in game, but instead, how many sessions go by. Each time a session ends, show an updated version of the map with one of the hexes blacked out. As to which hex is blacked out can be decided with a d6, since there's 6 sides to the hexagon, or if there's a villain doing all this, then you as the GM, aka the villain, can just choose one. The session by session clock instead of the day by day clock means that the players need to be conscious of their time. They may be much less likely to mess around if they know that their time at the table is based on how much they get done in a session, rather than an abstracted amount of time that their player characters experience that they can't control as much. Adding this board game's mechanics into the campaign almost makes it a game of map control. Will the heroes be able to unite this divided realm of kingdoms and empires in order to build a force able to combat this encroaching evil? Or will the affliction slowly take over the world? Very similar to this, but doesn't really have a ticking clock mechanic, is Settlers of Catan, a game about gaining resources to expand your settlements. Unlike Pandemic, this game already uses hexes, so there's another point for staying true to the source material. This setup could be perfect for a campaign, where the players get involved in not only making their characters stronger, but the kingdom around them. Depending on which faction the players join with, when a special dice is rolled during the session, it decides what faction gets what resource. You could simply roll 2 dice on a table, with one column being the resource gathered and the other one being the factions that gain it. The factions could all be political enemies, and one of them could be the campaign villain. This is where I meddle with the mechanics. Your group wants to rise, of course, but you may need to allow your enemies to gain a bit of power so you can both come together to beat the BBEG. From that point, it's a case of your players acting as either envoys or actual leaders of councils in their kingdoms as they bargain with the other kingdoms for their resources. Catan's trade features can really work well here as you try to ensure that your chosen kingdom rises. But remember, this is a role-playing game. You don't just have to bargain. You could go out on quests to steal, cheat, or even win over other vassals of other kingdoms and turn them onto your side by gaining their favour, and then show your expansion on the hex board. I just feel like these sort of games really work well because of the visual representations to show your progress over the course of a campaign. It motivates players to want to keep going, or to make phalluses out of hexes, I don't know. And finally, this one might seem a bit jarring, but stay with me. Battleship. I just think that the main mechanic can really work well for a campaign. Not knowing exactly where your enemy is, but launching attacks in the hope that you find important areas. This concept will again use hexes or even a grid over the map like how Battleships uses a grid, and it could be a nautical campaign like pirates and seafaring to encapsulate the spirit of battleships, but, you know, GM's choice. At the start of the campaign, give your players a map and tell them you are leaders of the secret resistance force fighting against the villain, be they a despotic king or a ghost pirate army or whatever. Then, you and the other players sit around and choose where your outposts are going to be based on the map. and the goal of the campaign is to locate where the villain outposts are by questing into hexes that you choose. Then you tell the GM where you're going to go in the session so they can plan around where you've picked. You may find a small enemy occupation represented by the destroyer in battleships, which takes up 2 spaces and could be a syndicate based in the city and their secret outpost out in the woods. You may find yourself at a huge sprawling dungeon, which is the enemy cruiser, or you may find yourself at a huge domain of the bad guys, which is their 5-space filling carrier. Or you might find nothing. At which point, you can spend the session setting up an outpost behind enemy lines or helping the settlement under threat from the bad guys that you're trying to face, and maybe even recruiting them. Meanwhile, the GM does the exact same thing. Each session, they also choose an area to send their group of bad guys. You might hear that an outpost is under attack, and then it's up to you. Do you turn and try to help them by fleeing from your current quest? Or let the villains try and take it as they search for your main headquarters. But I also suggest you implement a mechanic from the game, Stratego, where you and the villain can place what we're going to call a bomb. A bomb is a single space that is just set up to be a trap of some kind. Maybe it's rigged to blow, or maybe it contains a portal leading to another world, so while you're there trying to take it over, suddenly you're thrown into another world while the villains proceed with their assault. It can be super fun to hear that the villains have accidentally entered into your heavily guarded elven forest, and super terrifying to know that the dungeon you've entered into has all the doors locked as soon as you walk in to trap you there forever. Also, I just thought of this now, but the online version of Battleships has these extra things you can add in, like a strafing run to cover a bunch of areas at once, a landmine to help you cover a bunch of areas at once, and I can imagine that as the campaign goes on, you could get like super powerful spells or items that allow you to search or destroy a bunch of areas at once. And believe me, I did try other kinds of games, but if you start trying to force other games like, I don't know, Scrabble, then it becomes this really strained and weird experience. Like, I suppose you could use Scrabble to find the name of a devil, maybe? Nah, you're best off with Cluedo or Clue, or code names for that, I think, investigating to try and find the parts of a mystery, except instead of who killed who, the final answer is the 3 parts assembled together to find a devil's name. But anyway, while they might be a bit silly, I hope that you can draw some inspiration from these ideas. Fighting against the session-by-session clock to beat a spreading infection, using diplomacy and adventuring to secure resources, and of course, launching assaults of Syndicate versus Syndicate across a warring campaign. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, then click the video on screen to see other games to play besides D&D, or click the other video on screen to prepare for any campaign with much less stress and confusion. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.